What is your top 3 favorite things about a Fuji camera setup?
Top 3 favorite things about a Fujifilm camera setup. I like the compact mirrorless. I think that that's something that Fujifilm has really developed in a strong way. Where the companies like Sony went with full frame, they didn't necessarily cut any of the size or the weight off, whereas Fujifilm, having mastered APS-C, allows them to create a smaller body that's more compact. The other thing about Fujifilm is their history in optics. So they've been creating lenses for decades. So you never have to worry about a lens having issues. You know that the lenses are also going to be perfect. The third thing is that with the cameras and lenses that they're creating, they're also developing and articulating new firmware. With each update, they're actually able to bring the cameras, even the older cameras, they're actually able to bring them up to be close to the newer cameras. And they're also listening to the users in the communities. And when the community has a request for a camera, they're often able to solve it in firmware rather than releasing a new camera.
Okay. So what can you say, like still there's a lot of skeptics when it comes to using APS-C cameras for professional work, like for travel, for video.
Yeah.
So do you really need a full frame or to do like what you do?
Honestly, regarding APS-C, full frame, and even micro four thirds, for video, absolutely not. You do not need a full frame sensor for video. APS-C is wonderful, and to be honest, a micro four thirds camera does most of the things, and we can get now, using an iPhone, I can shoot 4K at 60 or 90 frames a second on a new iPhone, which is incredible. So the argument, I don't really understand that argument, because you have to really look past the camera itself and at the actual lenses. So Fujifilm has beautiful prime lenses at f1.2 or 1.4 that allow beautiful video in low light. So in that sense, it's primed perfectly. The other thing is the difference between APS-C and full frame was a lot larger. That gap was a lot larger 5 years ago, 6 years ago when Fujifilm got started. But since the DSLR companies were pushing full frame, when Fujifilm decided to pick up APS-C, they decided to progress that technology. So if we thought about it being, full frame was here 5 years ago, now APS-C and full frame are very similar. So there's only a few things that are different. Will you get better low light performance with the full frame sensor? Yes, you'll get a little bit better low light, a little bit lower ISO, and you're going to get a slightly softer depth of field. But there's also pros to shooting APS-C in that it's sharper at a lower aperture. So f5.6 on APS-C is similar to f8 on a full frame, which allows you to have a better shutter speed in lower light situations. So you actually have a lot of pros for shooting APS-C as well. So I feel now that the gap is so minimal that you can create professional level work with APS-C without a problem at all.
So what else do you think is missing in a Fuji system that is not there, that needs to be there to iron out all these skeptics that there's still something missing with the Fuji system?
I don't think that there are many skeptics anymore, because ever since they released the GFX camera, they decided to everybody was asking me for years, and it was frustrating me because people were like, when are they going to make a full frame camera? Full frame camera. Like, why would they make a full frame camera when they spent all this time on APS-C? And then I remember having a meeting in Tokyo like 2.5 years ago, and they told me that they're like, we're skipping full frame, going right to medium format. And I was like, okay, like if anybody was a skeptic before, they can pick up a GFX and it's going to be better than a full frame. So I just think that I don't think there's going to be that many skeptics in the next few years. I think we're starting to close the gap completely.
So on APS-C camera, which is your sort of main workhorse in the Fuji system?
Main workhorse is, of course, the XT2, because the weather sealing, I've had it in frozen environments, I've had it in the middle of a dust storm in the desert, I've had it in humidity, and it's always reliable, actually. And I also like it because it's a little bit different than the X Pro. I'm more of a fan of the viewfinder being in the center, more like a traditional style.
You're not a rangefinder guy.
Rangefinder, the number one thing that my friends tell me that they have a rangefinder camera is because when they look through it, they don't smear the LCD with their nose. Like that's the main, the main difference. Yeah.
Okay. So like 3 favorite lenses for your XT2 when you do travel, and you want to travel light.
Yeah. 10 to 24, 18 to 55, and then sometimes for astrophotography I take the 14 millimeter f2.8, and that's it.
Okay. So just a few tips for aspiring travel photographers. How to be you.
How to be me. Grow the hair a little longer. That's the only for sure thing there is. The most difficult thing that I try to explain is photography, and especially business. It doesn't happen. It doesn't come to you overnight. You have to invest the proper amount of time in anything that you do in your life, and it does take a while to gain skill. But for travel photography in general, is in order to take beautiful photographs, the easiest thing you can do is put yourself in a beautiful place. And you have to really think about the subjects. And when you choose beautiful locations that inspire you to be there. And then start working on the technique. But above all, the most important thing is to have fun. And remember that you're creating your work for yourself, not necessarily your audience. Don't get sucked into the Instagram likes, the Facebook likes, and the reshares. Create work that makes you happy and stick to it. And eventually the consumers for that type of media will find you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I remember we were part of the Photographing the World 4 that we've started. Earlier in the year, we were in Zion. Zion has this hike called Angel's Landing, which is probably the coolest hike I've ever been on in my life. It's one of my favorite experiences in the last 5 years. And it's like 6 miles, I think, or 7 miles round trip. And the first part is like this steep incline. And then the last half of it is actually, you have a chain and you're actually climbing up a mountain on a chain. And I decided to bring the GFX with me for that one. But usually with landscape photography, it's pretty easy because I'll need, well, speaking Fujifilm terms, I'll need the 10 to 24. I know I'm going to need the 10 to 24. And I use, in that situation, instead of using the 16 to 55, I actually use the 18 to 55, which is really small. So Fujifilm made a big mistake by making their 18 to 55 too good. So they're like, yeah, it's too good. It's just as sharp. It's the kit lens, but that lens can actually fit in the jacket pocket. So I can actually survive with an XT2 and those 2 lenses. And I'm actually, I'll have the gear with me tomorrow if you guys join tomorrow. I'm actually now with mirrorless cameras able to take smaller tripods and clamps and different things like that. So the one thing that I will have on the camera that's very important is an L bracket or an L pin, which takes up a little bit of weight. But essentially I'll minimize it. Where it gets difficult is if I'm doing video, sometimes I might need a telephoto. And I really like, in Bhutan for example, the mass dancers in the cultural festivals, I really like shooting with the 100 to 400, but I don't hike Tiger's Nest with that. Like that stays in the hotel. The hours hike. Oh, yeah, it's not so bad. I've done it like 4 or 5 times.